The letter arrived on the worst day of Amara's life. She had just been escorted out of her office building, a small cardboard box in her arms, her keycard cut in half by a security guard who wouldn't even look her in the eye. 7 years. 7 years she had given to that company, and they had let her go with a 2-line email and a box of desk trinkets. She sat in her car in the parking lot, rain hammering the windshield, and she didn't cry. She was too empty to cry. That was when her phone buzzed. A notification from a law firm she had never heard of. She almost ignored it, but something made her open it. Her great Aunt Abena had died. And she had left Amara a house. Amara hadn't seen Aunt Abena in over 15 years. The woman was a ghost in the family, spoken about in low voices, visited rarely, never fully explained. All Amara knew was that she lived alone in an old house at the edge of the city and that nobody liked to talk about why. She almost sold the property without visiting. But her landlord had already served her a notice, her savings were nearly gone, and a free house, even a strange one, was better than sleeping in her car. The moment Amara pulled up to the house, something shifted in her chest. It was tall, old, and quiet in a way that felt deliberate. The kind of quiet that didn't come from emptiness but from waiting. The neighbors on either side found reasons to go inside the moment she stepped out of her car. A woman across the street stared, then slowly closed her curtains. Great, Amara muttered to herself. Haunted house energy. Perfect. Inside, the house was cold but not dirty. Everything was preserved almost too well for a place that had been empty for months. There were photographs on the walls, Aunt Abena at different ages, always alone, always composed, always with that same unreadable expression. And in every single photo, there was a shadow behind her that didn't match anything in the room. Amara told herself it was the lighting. That first night, she lay on the old bed she had found made up with fresh linen she didn't put there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around her. The pipes knocked, the floorboards settled, and just before she fell asleep, she heard something that made every hair on her body stand up. Her name, whispered, softly, close. Hello, she said into the dark. Nothing. She didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, she threw herself into distraction. She explored the house room by room and found it oddly full for a dead woman's home. Clothes still folded, a half-burned candle on the windowsill, a cup of dried herbs on the kitchen table. And then, behind a loose panel in the study wall, she found the journal. It was old, the cover cracked and soft, filled with her aunt's handwriting, looping and urgent and sometimes shaking. Amara sat on the floor and began to read. At first it sounded like a love story. A woman deeply, overwhelmingly in love. But then the entries shifted. He came again last night. He does not knock. He simply appears. And I am no longer afraid. He told me his name is Kofi. He told me he has been in this house longer than the house has existed. I asked him what he wanted. He said, you. I performed the ritual on Thursday. I know what people would say. I do not care. He takes care of me. He has always taken care of me. And I have never felt less alone. Amara closed the journal slowly. She sat in the silence of that house, her heart hammering, the shadow in every photograph suddenly making horrifying, undeniable sense. Her aunt had not been a lonely eccentric. She had been bound, willingly, to something that wasn't human. And Amara was now living in its home. She should have left. Any rational person would have packed that cardboard box back into her car and driven until the house was nothing but a bad memory in the rearview mirror. But Amara had nowhere to go. And somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the logic screaming at her to run, there was something else. A stillness. A pull. Like the house itself was holding her gently in place. 3 days passed. Nothing happened. No whispers. No shadows. No mysterious voice calling her name in the dark. She almost convinced herself she had imagined it all. She started cleaning the house, fixing small things, cooking in the old kitchen. She applied for jobs and got no responses. She called her best friend Nadia and tried to explain the journal. Amara. Nadia's voice was careful in the way it got when she thought Amara was spiraling. You just lost your job. You're alone in a strange house. You're reading a dead woman's diary at midnight. Baby, that is not the behavior of someone who is okay. I'm not saying I'm okay. I'm saying something is in this house. Something like grief. Something like stress. Something like you need to come stay with me. Amara looked up from the phone. The candle on the windowsill, the one she had not lit, was burning. "I'll call you back," she whispered. She stood slowly, her eyes fixed on the flame. The room was warmer than it had any right to be. And then she saw him. Not a shadow this time. Not a shape at the edge of her vision. He was standing in the doorway of the study, tall and still, wearing something dark, his face calm and unreadable and heartbreakingly sad. "You read the journal," he said. His voice was low and even, like a man who had learned long ago that there was no point in rushing. Amara's throat tightened. "Who are you? You already know my name. I want to hear you say it." A pause. "Kofi." She gripped the edge of the table behind her. Her legs were shaking but she refused to let them buckle. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing you are not willing to give." He stepped into the room, not walking exactly, more like the space between them simply reduced. "Your aunt and I had an agreement. When she passed, the bond was left open. Incomplete. The house has been waiting." Waiting for what? For someone who belongs to her bloodline. Someone the house would recognize. His eyes, dark and steady and full of something ancient, found hers. "It recognized you the moment you stepped through the door." Amara laughed. It came out shaky and a little hysterical. "So what? I'm supposed to just marry a spirit? Because my aunt did. I cannot force you." His voice didn't change but something in it softened. "I have never forced anyone. But I will tell you what I told her, the night she was standing exactly where you are standing now, just as frightened, just as proud." He paused. "Let me take care of you. The way I was never able to take care of her at the end." The words hit Amara somewhere she was not prepared for. She thought about the parking lot. The rain. The cardboard box. 7 years and a 2-line email. She thought about every time she had held herself together alone because there was simply no one else to do it. She didn't perform the ritual that night. Or the next. She spent 4 days reading the rest of the journal, learning what the bond meant, what it asked of her, what it gave. She fought with herself constantly. She called Nadia again and said nothing about Kofi. She sat in the study and asked him questions for hours and he answered every single one without flinching. "Does it hurt?" she asked one evening. "What? Being here, alone, for so long?" He was quiet for a moment. "It is not pain the way you experience pain. It is more like incompleteness. A song with no ending." She looked at him for a long time. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." On the 5th night, she lit the candle herself. She found the page in the journal with the words of the ritual and she read them aloud slowly, her voice steady even though her hands were not. She wrote her name beside his in the old ink the journal instructed her to use. And when the candle went out on its own, the house exhaled around her like something that had been holding its breath for years. She woke up the next morning to birdsong she had never heard from that street before. The house was warm. The light coming through the windows was golden and full. She picked up her phone and saw a bank notification that stopped her breathing entirely. A deposit. Substantial. From an account name she didn't recognize but somehow knew better than to question. Within 2 weeks, a business opportunity arrived through an old contact she had long forgotten. Within a month, she had signed a lease on a small office space. Within 3 months, the business was growing faster than she could rationally explain. The house continued to provide groceries, opportunities, connections, in ways that were always just plausible enough to not be called miracles but never quite explainable either. Kofi never asked for gratitude. He never demanded anything. He was simply there, steady, quiet, present, in the way that nobody living had ever managed to be for Amara. And for a while, it felt like enough. He was a client she met at a networking event 6 months into the business. Warm, funny, attentive in a way that felt genuine rather than performed. He asked for her number and she gave it to him, feeling something she had almost forgotten. The nervous, electric flutter of being wanted by someone who could actually hold her hand in the daylight. They went on 2 dates. The first was easy and laughing and full of long conversations that stretched past midnight. The second ended with Daniel going quiet halfway through dinner, shifting in his seat like something invisible was making him deeply uncomfortable. He drove her home, said goodnight politely, and never called again. Amara sat in the car outside the house for a long time that night. She thought about the man before Daniel. And the one before him. How they all followed the same pattern, interest, warmth, then a sudden inexplicable withdrawal. Like a door swinging open and then slamming shut before she could walk through it. She went inside and found Kofi in the study. "It's you, isn't it?" she said. It wasn't a question. He didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. "Kofi." Her voice broke at the edges. "Look at me. Tell me the truth." He turned to face her slowly. "I do not threaten them. I do not harm them. But my presence in your life is not invisible to those who come close enough. They feel something they cannot name. Something that tells them to step back. So you're keeping them away from me." The anger in her chest was sharp and hot and mixed painfully with something that felt embarrassingly close to heartbreak. "You said you would never force anything. You said this was a choice. And it was. It is." His voice was quiet but unflinching. "But a bond is a bond, Amara. I cannot unmake what was made. I can only tell you what I told you at the beginning. I promised to provide. I promised to be present. I never promised to share you." She stared at him. "So I get the money. I get the success. I get the house and the warmth and everything I never had. And in exchange I just live without love. Without a real partner. Without a family. Your aunt did not find it an unbearable exchange. I am not my aunt." The words came out louder than she intended, filling the room, bouncing off the old walls. She pressed her fingers to her mouth and breathed. When she spoke again her voice was low and trembling. "I am not her, Kofi. I love what we have. I do. You have given me more than I ever thought I deserved. But I am 30 years old and I want a life. A full life. Not half of one." The room was very still. Kofi looked at her with those ancient, steady eyes, and for the first time since she had known him, something in them cracked open. Not anger. Not coldness. Something far worse. Something that looked unmistakably like grief. "I know," he said quietly. "I have always known." She found the spiritual elder through a woman at the local market who pressed a name and address into her palm without being asked, as if she had been waiting for the right moment. The elder was a small, sharp-eyed woman named Mama Ifua who took one look at Amara on her doorstep and said, "I wondered when one of Abena's girls would come." The process of releasing the bond was not dramatic. There was no fire, no earthquake, no screaming. There was a ritual, quieter than the first one. There was a conversation, her last real conversation with Kofi, that she has never repeated to anyone in full. What she has said is this: he was not a monster. He was not a demon. He was something ancient and lonely that had loved in the only way it knew how, completely, protectively, and without the ability to let go. And when she released him, he did not fight it. He stood in the center of that warm, golden house and he looked at her with an expression that she will carry with her for the rest of her life. "Will you be all right?" she asked him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have existed longer than this city," he said softly. "I will endure." A pause. "Will you?" She almost said she didn't know. Instead she straightened her shoulders, the way she had learned to do in parking lots in the rain with cardboard boxes in her arms. "I always do." The candle went out. The house went cold. And Amara stood alone in the silence, truly alone for the first time in months, and let herself cry. Not from fear this time. Not from desperation. But from the strange, complicated grief of losing something that was never supposed to be hers in the first place. She kept the house. She kept the business, which by that point had grown enough to sustain itself on its own. She kept the journal, locked in the same wall panel where she found it. And on quiet evenings when the light hits the windows just right and the house feels inexplicably warm for no reason she can explain, she sits in the study and she does not feel entirely alone. She has never told anyone what really happened in that house. Until now.